hard. It'd just drive it into a state of murderous rage. Though he's of satisfaction in knowing its tongue would probably be in distress for a few minutes afterwards, it's unlikely to wipe out the beast once and for all. Lacey Roy suggested, how about we just put SCP-682 in 2317's cell? SCP-2317 is an old wooden door that functions as a portal into the domain of the planet-destroying monster known as the Devourer of Worlds, a being that many believe is associated with the Scarlet King, and will inevitably escape and cause an XK-class end-of-the-world scenario. While you may be thinking, perhaps it'll kill 682, it's more likely that it'll collaborate, seeing as they both want the same thing.
Like me!
If you let 682 in, chances are it'll come back through the door with the Devourer right on its tail. Then, it's all of our problems. Guest 123116 suggested drop him in Russia so they can terminate him. They've technically already tried this. They dropped 682 into SCP-3930, a patch of literal non-existence in Russia that causes anything that goes inside of it to cease to exist. And afterwards, he was fine. So yeah, dropping him anywhere in Russia is probably just going to get a bunch of innocent Russian civilians killed. Meisher said, the Foundation shouldn't worry about how to kill him, but how to stop his ability to adapt. I would suggest typing SCP-682 no adaptability juice or something like that into SCP-294 and then kill him by any means, which should kill him forever. An interesting theory. But what if he simply adapts to SCP-682 no adaptability juice? Then we'd really all be in trouble. Mario TGP said, give him a Twitter account, he'll be cancelled instantly for his spicy opinions. SCP-682 would cancel Twitter itself for not having opinions that are spicy enough. Sorry, Jack. SCP-096, still sore about losing the battle, we assume, said, let him fight the Queen of England. After all, she's immortal too. We definitely think it would be interesting to see SCP-682 go head-to-head with the Queen of England. Based on all the knighting she does, we know that she at least has a sword, though we don't know if that sword is as powerful as the one wielded by the Gate Guardian. But regardless of the outcome, the battle would definitely change history. Every history book would simply read, SCP-682 punched the Queen. Everything else would just be a footnote. Noah Cordero said, use SCP-2935 to kill the lizard. As you can see in the video, he will die. SCP-2935, also known as O-Death, is probably one of the scariest and deadliest SCPs out there. It killed an entire alternate dimension, including an alternate SCP-682. The problem is, putting R-682 into 2935's alternate reality could lead to the destruction of our entire dimension. Why is that? Because if 682 was somehow able to return to our world from the world of 2935, it could bring the spirit of death itself back with it, and kill us all in the process. Explorando con Beto 1 suggested, SCP-682 vs. Lady Dimitrescu. While Resident Evil 8's Lady Dimitrescu has certainly captured all of our hearts, we don't think she'll be bringing home the W on this one. Lady Dimitrescu has a powerful adaptive ability of her own, with a high resistance to damage, impressive regenerative abilities, and a number of offensive capabilities, from huge claws to a powerful dragon form. However, considering she wasn't able to defeat Ethan Winters, she probably wouldn't be able to defeat SCP-682 either. However, in her dragon form, SCP-682 may finally join the rest of us in developing a crush. Or is that being crushed? Anyway, moving on. Jonathan Peckany suggested, just ask SCP-343 on how to destroy it, or even better, ask if he could destroy it. It's an idea so good that the Foundation actually tried it, and it went about as well as you can expect. When the SCP known as God entered the containment chamber, he couldn't even see 682 in there, as though the creature was somehow totally invisible to him. When God eventually got bored and left, they told him that he was in there to destroy 682. He simply replied, he's not one of mine, deal with him yourself. Interpret that how you will. 12 Escobar Blanca's Eddie Saul suggested they could send him to Area 37 for the Sisters to experiment with. SCP-1765, the Sisters, are a trio of terrifyingly powerful reality warpers that have taken over Area 37, and spend their days tormenting everyone inside with their twisted experiments. Using them to try to terminate 682 leads to similar problems with using the Witch Child or the Devourer of Worlds. If they decide to team up rather than fighting, or the Sisters take over 682, we'd all be effectively doomed. Kiroya suggested, would the ants from SCP-743 tear 682 apart? The Foundation actually tried this, getting 682 to consume chocolate from the SCP-743 fountain, incurring the wrath of its flesh-eating ants. However, 682 developed an adaptation that gave it a long anteater-like tongue that it then used to consume the ants faster than they could consume it. And even worse, the chocolate seemed to enhance its regenerative abilities even more for several days afterwards. Ball 2222 suggested, write the name in the death note. Great idea! We'll put it into practice as soon as you can tell us SCP-682's real name. It may come as a surprise, but its parents didn't actually name it the hard-to-destroy reptile. Stephen Vieri suggested, I thought that maybe we should put him in a giant blender, and then when he's in small pieces, put lava in the blender, so we'll incinerate him, then put nuclear waste into the blender and repeat that until there's no more left of him. After the cooking whisks last time, we feel obliged to include at least one attempt to kill SCP-682 with oversized kitchen equipment in every video about him. However, this attempt would probably go about as well as the last one, we're afraid. Extreme physical trauma by conventional means, like burning and dismemberment, has never been successful in the past, and the Foundation is extremely hesitant to use anything radioactive on the beast, in case it adapts and adds deadly radiation to its own arsenal. Mr. Master IQ suggested, just take away his plot armor. You can pry SCP-682's plot armor from its cold, dead claws, and as we've already learned, making those claws cold and dead seems next to impossible. Moving on. JC3 suggested, if anyone can't beat the Undying Lizard, why not Omniman? I mean, he did kill all the Guardians of the Globe, of course he can kill SCP-682. Omniman from the comic and TV series Invincible is undeniably a formidable opponent, given he's able to destroy superhero teams, cities, and even planets. However, one of the few enemies to give Omniman a genuine run for his money is a genetically enhanced kaiju known as Hail Mary. Given that first, 682 has taken on being stronger than Omniman, like the Gate Guardian, and lived, and second that Omniman has struggled with monsters before, chances are he probably couldn't permanently kill this one either. Heikani Havea suggested, kill SCP-053, then 682 will be sad and die. Wow, now that's cold-blooded. However, even if this did work, it's important for you to remember that it's impossible to actually kill SCP-053, also known as the child or the little girl. Part of her anomalous abilities is that anyone who attempts to kill her will themselves immediately die during the process, normally due to a heart attack. So this method would result in a pile of dead Foundation personnel and no progress. Jerry Zhang said, mush peanut butter on it. This would definitely work if 682 had some kind of severe peanut allergy. After all, anaphylactic shock is no laughing matter. However, in the far more likely event that this will have no effect on SCP-682, you will likely just die with your hands covered in peanut butter. Andrew Mills suggested, my idea? Have several xenomorphs, predators, and Daleks, yes, that's a Doctor Who reference, take 682 on. Once again, in all likelihood, this would have no effect. 682 has survived blades and lasers, the primary weapons of the predators and Daleks, and spends the majority of its life immersed in powerful acid, so the xenomorph would hold no surprises for it. Sadly, this three-way team-up would be no match for 682, and even if it did defeat him, whoever wins, well, you know how it goes. Mateo Huang suggested, maybe just destroy reality. This might be the thing that finally kills SCP-682, but considering it's already survived being thrown into pure nothingness in Russia, it may just result in it being one of the only survivors of a full destruction of reality. We, on the other hand, would all be killed, though in a sense we wouldn't have to deal with SCP-682 anymore. So maybe that's a type of winning? And finally, Blind Honor suggested, would Saitama be a good way to eliminate it? He is One Punch Man after all. Of anyone we've covered in this series, Saitama from One Punch Man would probably be the most likely to kill SCP-682, especially if he was taking the battle seriously. After all, he has killed planet-destroying monsters before with barely any effort. The only real question is whether he could be bothered to come down to a Foundation containment site and fight it. Saitama hasn't been known to be a very motivated guy. But of course, like with anything, there's the risk that 682 would survive and gain his powers, which would be bad. Awesome, but bad. Do you have new ideas for how SCP-682 could be killed? Do you think you have the key to finally bringing this beast to a well-deserved end? Let us know down in the comments, and keep an eye on our
We are specialty coffee roasters, and even though roasting is a very physical process,
Fuck off, ad.
To many, Nikola Tesla was a genius, unappreciated in his own time. Born in the Austrian Empire in 1856, the Serbian-American inventor was arguably one of the most brilliant minds of his day, and yet Tesla never reached the level of fame and acclaim that he perhaps deserved. For those of you who are unfamiliar with his work, Nikola Tesla was a mechanical and electrical engineer, best known for his contributions to the designs for what would become the modern alternating current electricity supply system, or AC. It was Tesla's hope that he could patent and sell his inventions, that the creations and advancements he made would help to improve the lives of everyday people. Unfortunately, due to the ruthless and callous business practices of his rival, Thomas Edison, much of Nikola Tesla's work faded into obscurity after his death in 1943. However, what if one of his inventions was not only a success, but proved so deadly in its intended function that it had to be contained? And who better to keep something like that secure than the experts in anomalous entities, objects, and technology? The SCP Foundation. Meet the Teleforce, one of the surviving inventions of Nikola Tesla's legacy, better known to our friends at the Foundation as SCP-2700. While most information about various anomalies is kept secret by the Foundation through the use of memory-altering drugs called amnestics, SCP-2700 may be one of the few anomalies that the public is aware of, or at least, they might be aware of the proposed concept of the Teleforce. Tesla himself described the invention as a type of weapon that would fire pellets or rounds of material. However, rather than acting like a conventional firearm, the Teleforce would launch these projectiles at high velocity from inside a vacuum chamber, using electrostatic repulsion to fire these rounds at the intended target. This probably sounded like a weapon pulled straight from early works of science fiction, but Nikola Tesla claimed that it was an idea that came to him after he studied the Van de Graaff generator. It was Tesla's hope that his Teleforce could be used as a defensive weapon to a well-known law of physics. It would disperse to such an extent as to be ineffectual. My apparatus projects particles. As for the device itself, well, the SCP Foundation was able to uncover a seemingly perfected version of the Teleforce in 1946, 3 years after Nikola Tesla's death. Found in an abandoned research facility believed to have been used by Tesla himself, SCP-2700 seemed to be the weapon that the Serbian inventor had described. It was only when the SCP Foundation began to take a closer look at the device that their researchers realized something. SCP-2700 could be even more dangerous than Tesla had intended the Teleforce to be in his original designs for the weapon. The device itself is made from 3 main components. First is the interface, designated SCP-2700-1. This is a metal console, complete with a QWERTY keyboard and a display screen, along with a number of buttons, switches, dials, and levers, each responsible for controlling a key aspect of SCP-2700. 2700-1 features a command-based operating system, with any command typed on the keyboard appearing on screen in green block text. The Foundation is still baffled as to...
It's 5 PM. Let's head back to my room, I guess. Head to bed. Wake up in the morning. Another day at this facility. Okay, let's head down here. Let's head down here, buddy. Let's head down here. Here we are. Good night, I'm gonna lock this door. Yeah, I know. Let's head to bed. It's 7 in the morning. Let's have a shower, I guess. There we are. Wash my hands. Can you let me out? Can you unlock this door? Sure.
How an engineer like Tesla, even one as gifted as he, was able to create an operating system like this with the limitations of technology during the early 1940s. A network of conductive copper wiring then connects the SCP-2700-1 control console to the other two components of SCP-2700, appropriately known as SCP-2700-2 and SCP-2700-3. Foundation researchers tasked with examining and understanding the Teleforce believe the SCP-2700-2 part of the device to be a particle accelerator. Now, it's hard to go into exactly how particle accelerators work in this video, but we'll do our best to keep it short and simple. Like the name suggests, a particle accelerator's job is to increase the speed of subatomic particles like protons or electrons. Basically, particle accelerators create a beam of these particles that have been charged to hold extremely high amounts of energy, and these charged particle beams are often useful for a number of different scientific research methods. That's what the big particle accelerator up at CERN is used for. This one, SCP-2700-2 on the other hand is, well, it's not for research per se. It's held securely in a lead-lined tungsten chamber in the shape of a cylinder, although it contains all the parts you'd expect to find in a modern-day particle accelerator. SCP-2700-2 is a lot smaller, at just 7.35 meters long. Then we get to SCP-2700-3, the core of the Teleforce. Also composed of lead-lined tungsten, it is a spherical frame with an apparatus inside, visible through a silica glass porthole on one side. Within this outer sphere is another smaller sphere frame that was built using an unidentified material. According to notes that the Foundation has recovered, Tesla himself wrote that this space inside the sphere is held in a perpetual vacuum state. But what is perhaps most interesting and concerning about SCP-2700-3 isn't the metal frame itself, but rather what is held inside of it. Glowing at the center is the fourth and final component of Teleforce, known only as SCP-2700 Omega. This, as far as the best minds of the SCP Foundation can tell, is the power source of the weapon. It is an anomaly in and of itself, a phenomenon of energy that does not behave within the normal laws of physics. Specifically, SCP-2700 Omega directly contradicts what is known as entropy. Due to these abnormal properties, the space within SCP-2700-3 containing SCP-2700 Omega does not obey standard rules of time. The flow of time within the power source's chamber seems to be reversed somehow. However, researchers have noted that the frame and inner sphere of SCP-2700-3 that surround SCP-2700 Omega seem to be unaffected by these anomalous effects. It is because of this power source that SCP-2700 is even more dangerous than Nikola Tesla would have ever intended. Never mind the fact that the Teleforce weapon was designed to fire supercharged high-velocity rounds at a target. The sole component powering it could prove to be devastatingly destructive itself, if it ever broke out from within its frame. According to predictions and calculations made by the SCP Foundation's top scientific researchers, if SCP-2700 Omega was ever to be released or accidentally break free from the SCP-2700-3 apparatus that contains it, then the result would be catastrophic.
Holy moly, we've done it.
I'd love to shut
The power
down
source's anomalous properties,
SCP-3.
resisting the laws of physics and time themselves, would cause a massive chain reaction. The rest of the universe would be converted to the same inverted state of entropy that SCP-2700 Omega exists in, which would ultimately lead to a YK-class entropic annihilation event. The whole universe as we know it would be pulled inwards, creating an infinitely energetic singularity. In short, it would be the Big Bang, but in reverse, with all of creation pulled inside out. The worst part of all of this, according to the readouts on SCP-2700-1's display monitor, the Teleforce has been armed. Counting down, the weapon is scheduled to activate in the year 2234, exactly 300 years after being armed, most likely by Tesla himself. If the device was to ever fully activate, SCP-2700 Omega would be breached, and the entire universe could be unraveled and sucked into a singularity. The only hope the SCP Foundation has of preventing this destruction is to destroy or contain SCP-2700 within another SCP. The O5 Council are still searching for a suitable candidate should the worst come to pass. For now, personnel have been instructed to avoid tampering with the Teleforce in any way, shape, or form. Should SCP-2700 Omega show any change in its behavior, then let's just hope that the Overseer Council is able to produce an anomaly capable of neutralizing it. But there's still one other big question that needs answering. Namely, how on earth did Nikola Tesla, a scientist limited by the technology of his time, create a power source like SCP-2700 Omega? Something with the capability to unravel the entire universe if it ever breached its containment. Well, the man himself may have given us the answers. The SCP Archives file on SCP-2700 concludes with an extract of a log that Nikola Tesla kept during the last decade of his life. As we mentioned before, Tesla was not exactly a success in his own time. He chose to keep trying to produce his inventions despite driving himself towards financial ruin. He was the Vincent van Gogh of science. Depression took a hold of the inventor in his later years, until one day he was approached by a mysterious figure. This man, as it turns out, was a traveler from another universe, and brought Tesla with him to this alternate reality. In his logbook, Nikola lamented over how discontent he was with his life in our universe, and how transcendently beautiful it was in this new one. While there, Tesla worked with a group of fellow scientists, all brought to that universe by the same traveler, with the goal of creating a source of perpetual energy. This power source was intended to break the known laws of thermodynamics, and it seemed that SCP-2700 Omega itself was the outcome of these scientific minds coming together. By combining two substances from two universes,
SCP-000, follow me. I need you to experiment with this SCP. Where's the gate? The gate. Gate is over here. Follow me. This way. I'm trying to figure out where's the pods, basically? Like the iPods. iPods. Here, iPods. This way. Here we are. Get in. Get in. Whatever. What you gonna do, huh? What you gonna do? Huh? What you gonna do to me? Come on. You can do better than that. Is that your power? Just knock back? Huh? You can do better than that. Look at you. Huh? Shit. Okay. I'm gonna play that, huh? Shit. Fuck. Oh, shit. That being is going to pay. I'm gonna get revenge on that fucking being. Where is the fucking being at? I think it's down here, yeah. It's down here somewhere, dude. Weak. I told you I'll be back for revenge. I told you. Now look at you, you're nothing. You're weak. You're nothing compared to me. I can't believe I swear to God. Weak. Gods are weak. I cannot believe I just swear to God. A God of darkness. I cannot believe I just swear to God can't. Oh, it was too easy. It was way too easy. Yeah, buddy, it was way too easy. Give me a second, let me try something. I bring you back to life. You have to follow me. Got it? Okay, boss, I will do whatever you say. Good. You are just weak, but I will we will get out of here soon. Me and you and my brother, my sister, my human sister are going to take over the world, destroy worlds. So, you are gonna obey me now. I bring you back to life. And that's final. Okay, SCP-001. Go back to the courtyard. I didn't know I have the power to bring things back. Hell yeah. What else power do I have? I can bring things back from dead. I wonder what else power I have, dude. I'm immortal. I'm the Scarlet King's son. I can bring things back from the dead. What else powers do I have hidden away in my body?
With completely different laws of physics to our own. Tesla and the others created the power source they had dreamed of, but things quickly started to go wrong. Tesla realized that the core, later known as Scp-2700 Omega, was somehow moving backwards in time. As he tried to correct it, he realized the device had been locked, and that someone had armed it. Why? The Traveler revealed that this was his plan all along, to create something capable of destroying this universe. It turned out the alternate universe he had brought Tesla to was not the Traveler's home, rather a different place he wished to destroy with the singularity that SCP-2700 Omega would cause. The Traveler vanished to his true home, leaving Nikola Tesla alone with SCP-2700. Saddened to think his invention would destroy this new universe, which he found to be profoundly beautiful, he made a truly unexpected decision. He returned home, and in his sadness, thought it would be better if the device he'd helped create brought about the end of our universe. SCP-2700 is now a ticking time bomb, destined to wipe out our entire reality unless the device can be disarmed or otherwise neutralized. All this set in motion by a scientist long dead, who submitted all of us as an unwilling sacrifice for a universe we'd never know. Or perhaps this was done as an act of revenge for his own lack of success and appreciation in life. One final act to make sure that if he wasn't remembered, no one else would be either. Or maybe, just maybe, Tesla saw past the slights. Maybe he had so much faith in humanity that he trusted we would one day be able to figure out how to stop SCP-2700 Omega, and both universes in the process. No matter his reasoning, all we can do now is place our hope in the SCP Foundation's top minds to find a solution. But the clock is ticking. Now go check out SCP-1461.
Shit!
To create a high-performance machine, equal parts art and automobile. That was the brief. Ordered and awarded like any masterpiece. There's always critics. We were a team, despite our differences. I realized they weren't watching, waiting to pounce. No, they were hiding. My eyes popped open as the door opened and in rushed 6 security personnel. The young girl stood silently in a room full of corpses, staring off into the distance. She was in a trance, seemingly unaware of the carnage that had just unfolded around her. Some of the men were shot or stabbed or beaten. Others had no apparent cause of death whatsoever, but the young girl was unscathed. She was wearing a yellow summer dress and looked like she couldn't have been more than 3 years old. She awoke from her trance, still paying no heed to the violence in the room, and left. This is the story of SCP-053, the young girl.
My
Her
sister.
strange and terrifying life before containment, her thrilling capture, and and the part she played in one of the most dangerous SCP Foundation cross tests of all time. She had no name. The young girl could never spend enough time around someone to be given one. It was her terrible curse that she could never stay in one place for too long, or something truly awful would happen to everyone around her. She'd been drifting for years, but never grew to look older than a child. Her memories were long but formless, divided mostly into 10-minute increments. The young girl kept on moving. It was all she could do. In 1993, when the young girl had already been alive for a very long time, she found herself in Illinois after days of trekking on the roadside. She would scavenge what little food she needed from the trash.
Here we are at the courtyard, yo. Let's chill, smoke, and watch YouTube.
Few dollars, and though she knew her contact with people had to be limited, there was one thing she wanted that felt worth the risk: a candy bar. It'd been a long time since she tasted chocolate, and she found the idea of tasting it again too enticing to resist. When she reached Chicago, she entered for reasons even she didn't fully understand. She kept her eyes down as she placed the money on the counter. You see, SCP-053 was always a special child. As we briefly mentioned earlier, you might even say she was cursed. Whenever she was around other people for too long, terrible things tended to happen. Unspeakable things. And as a component of this strange, unexplainable curse, or perhaps as a means of keeping her safer, the young girl was doomed to never understand the nature of her predicament. It was like there was a mental wall between her and the horrors her presence could cause. All she knew was that it was best to avoid eye contact, stay away from large groups of people at all costs, and never spend any longer than 10 minutes around anyone. Ever. That's why, as she waited for her chocolate bar at the cash register, she kept her head down and waited to go. The cashier looked upon this strange girl with apparent concern. It'd been a slow day, all in all. A few listless patrons milled around the store, window shopping. His brain was practically on autopilot until he saw this child. She looked filthy, in a disheveled dress, and was totally alone. What on earth had happened to this child? The more he looked at her, the more he sensed a creepy vibe exuding from her. Something about this girl was wrong. He spoke softly to her, introducing himself as Miles, and asking her where her mommy and daddy were. The young girl hesitated for just a few seconds too long before simply saying that they were at home. Any parent who'd let their 3-year-old kid just wander around the south side of Chicago alone was either crazy, neglectful, or both. He asked her politely to remain in the store while he gave the police a quick call. He'd even let her have the candy bar for free while she waited. Immediately, the little girl became uncomfortable. She had already been in here for a few minutes now, and while Miles called the police, he expected her to wait around even longer. Again, she couldn't even tell you why she knew waiting around like this would be so dangerous, but she had a nagging, instinctual awareness that she needed to get out. Around the store, the few patrons still inside started to get a strange feeling, like someone was watching them. Soon, what seemed like mild paranoia was quickly becoming white-hot anger. Pure rage. They felt almost like they had to kill someone, but not just anyone. Someone particular. They had to kill the little girl. It wasn't long until the police arrived. 2 officers, Holiday and DeWitt, entered to collect the apparently neglected little girl. It was a story they'd sadly heard all too often, a tragically common occurrence in the big city. When the 2 of them approached the young girl, she was looking down at the ground. They tried to speak to her, but she was unresponsive. Miles looked on, concerned, but deep down, he felt the same bizarre progression all the other store-goers were feeling. Confusion, irritability, and finally, violent rage. The corner store was a powder keg. All it needed now was a spark. And that spark came when Officer Holiday reached down and took the young girl by the arm. His bare skin touched hers, and it was all over. The cop twitched. His mind washed out in murderous insanity as he reached for his sidearm. Officer DeWitt opened his mouth to protest, but but he didn't manage to get a syllable out before Holiday turned and shot him. In a fraction of a second, the quiet corner store exploded into a violent bloodbath as the patrons and cops slaughtered each other. All the while, the young girl just stood there in a trance.
Sure.
Everyone was dead
Thanks.
within minutes, except Miles and the young girl. He shakily rose to his feet, his mind carved out by madness, and reached for Officer Holiday's discarded pistol. Outside of the store, the young girl appeared, walking out as if nothing had happened. Inside, Miles's body was sprawled over the counter, clutching his chest as if his heart had just exploded. This was the true nature of the young girl's curse. Anyone who meets her eye, touches her skin, or spends over 10 minutes around her is destined to slip into a state of murderous insanity.
So what's your name?
Will go into a kill-crazy frenzy and attack anyone around
Stacy.
until all that is left is them and the
What are you? I'm
at
at SCP.
but the mere act of
My number is 150. SCP-150.
massive heart attack or a seizure. The second part of the girl's curse is that
What are
she
you
herself
pretty much?
never die. She keeps coming back, unknowingly causing more misery and death along the way. Until, of course, a certain secret organization took notice. That night,
I am a mature joint.
the local abandoned warehouse, quietly eating her hard-earned candy bar. Suddenly, she heard a quiet crack in the distance.
I am a reality bender.
She could barely move it.
I can bend reality whenever I want.
Started sticking out of her skin. Instinctively, she got up
Cool.
and began to
I
run,
know.
limping as her left leg started to lose all feeling to it. Suddenly, she was
Stacy.
surrounded by
Yep.
footsteps as masked men in SWAT uniforms emerged out of the darkness on all sides. The last thing she remembered before slipping out of consciousness was a blindfold being pulled over her eyes and tiny metal handcuffs clasping over her wrists. When she woke up, she was in the nicest room she had slept in years. It was 16 feet by 16 feet, with toys, books, and games. Standing across the room from her was a stranger in a full hazmat suit, connected to a long steel cable leading out of the room. He spoke calmly and politely. A timer on his wrist counted down from 10 minutes. The stranger explained to the young girl that they would be taking care of her now, and would provide her with all the toys and games and treats she wanted, provided she cooperated and submitted willingly to some tests. Compared to living out on the street